The new M5 iPad Pro has completely changed how I work just in the short week that I have had it. And that's not because it is the most powerful iPad ever made, but just because it is genuinely practical. It has very quickly become this creative tool that has just perfectly fitted the way I work, whether I'm out and about editing photos on the go, planning new ideas, or just keeping me inspired when I'm not behind the camera, or in front of the camera actually in this case, when I'm making YouTube videos. But I've always tried to keep my photography setup as simple as I possibly can throughout the whole process, whether that's being out shooting and the cameras I'm using, all the way through to editing. I like a nice, simple workflow, and the iPad fits that same idea perfectly. It's lightweight, it's portable, and it makes me just want to sit down and create with it, and it's very quickly become one of my go-to devices for a lot of my work. I'll use it to plan my shoots or script my YouTube videos, I'll use it to edit while I'm out and about on the go, and I'll use the Apple Pencil to help jot down some quick notes or sketch some quick ideas, and it's really helped to bridge the gap between my professional side of photography and the more creative side of things as well, which help to keep things fun. My Mac is still where I do most of my heavy editing for both photo and video. I think at the moment the iPad is still quite a way off being your main editing device, although I can see it slowly edging towards that in the future. At the moment, I think if you're a heavy video editor and you do a lot of photo editing, a Mac is still pretty much essential for all of that. But for little bits of editing while you're out on the go, the iPad is it's genuinely incredible. I haven't used an iPad at all for the last 3 or 4 years now, so the difference in jumping into this M5 iPad Pro from the very first iPad Pro from years ago that I used to use is absolutely insane. It has completely blown me away. And I don't just mean in terms of how powerful and capable it is. I mean in terms of like the whole thing, like the design of it as well. It is a stunning piece of design. It looks incredible. I can't get over how thin it is. I know this hasn't changed from the last version of the iPad, the M4, but I never even picked one of them up. I can't get over how thin it is. Look at that. I'm not even gonna get that to, oh, we just got it to focus on camera. It is insanely thin. It feels incredible to hold, but the pencil is even thicker than the iPad. Look at that. I'm not going to go too deep into photo editing in this video, but editing photos on your iPad is genuinely really enjoyable. Lightroom on the iPad is very capable, and being able to import all of your raw photos and then cull through them, apply quick presets while you're out and about on the go is something that I cannot underestimate, and it genuinely makes a big difference to your workflow. And then if you're using Lightroom, you can then sync all of that to your Mac so you can carry on editing later on when you get home. And again, I know that is nothing drastically new, but it's not something that I've ever done a huge amount of. And the power that the M5 iPad Pro brings to that is just incredible. It is seamless. And there's something really enjoyable about using the Apple Pencil that just makes photo editing feel a little bit more tactile. When you're sliding sliders around and you're brushing and drawing masks, there's something much more enjoyable about using this to edit photos than when you're using a mouse or a trackpad. Maybe it just comes down to how much more accurate you can be with this, because it is much more like drawing. And one thing that has made a big difference to using the Apple Pencil and photo editing is the screen protector that I'm using on the M5 iPad Pro, and that is one of the paper-like screen protectors. And that does make a big difference because it gives the screen more of a matte finish, a bit more textured, and makes it feel like you're drawing on paper a little bit more than just drawing straight onto the glossy iPad screen. And it almost sounds a bit more like paper as well. It just gives it a much more tactile experience while using the Apple Pencil. Instead of it sliding around the screen and not having too much control over it, you can have much more precise control over what you're doing with the pencil, and that genuinely makes a big difference. I'll pop a link in the description to the paper-like screen protector that I use because it's genuinely brilliant, and it is incredibly easy to apply it as well when you compare it to all of the other screen protectors that I've ever used and messed them up and got air bubbles and not put it on straight. There's this whole system that makes it incredibly easy to apply the Paperlike screen protector. This video isn't sponsored by Paperlike, by the way. I'm just a big fan of the product. I think it's great. So yeah, there's a link in the description if you want to go and have a look. But yeah, anyway, I'm a big fan of photo editing on the iPad. I think it is just a really nice experience. And if you have an Adobe photography plan, you get the iPad app included in that plan. I'm not a big fan of Adobe's subscription model, if I'm honest. Like, a lot of people don't seem to be. That is for another video entirely. I'm not going to get into that. I could go on for hours about that. But yeah, photo editing on the iPad is great. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed most about using an iPad again recently is how they fit seamlessly into your current setup and workflow. And for me, there are two main ways in which this is absolutely brilliant. The first is with Sidecar, and this is where you get extra screen space from your Mac and it extends over to your iPad completely wirelessly. And that is perfect for having things like reference images or notes open while you edit, or maybe you want to split your Lightroom workspace over between two devices so you can have your gallery open on your iPad, for example, and then a full screen image for editing on your Mac. And that is the same in apps like Final Cut Pro and DaVinci as well. You can extend your displays over into two devices, but you can also have extra windows open on your iPad and drag them over from your Mac and just use it as a second monitor. And that is especially useful when you're out and about on the go. So you can have your MacBook and your iPad set up in a coffee shop and you've got two displays to use for whatever you want. And just extending that screen space is incredibly useful. There are a couple of small frustrations that I have with Sidecar, and that is mainly that you lose full touchscreen compatibility with your iPad for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why, because you still get tap functionality with the pencil, but you can't scroll with the pencil, but you can scroll with two fingers on your iPad, but you can't tap with one finger on your iPad. That just doesn't make complete sense to me. It seems a little bit backwards for some reason, and I'm not entirely sure why it is. I think if you had full touchscreen compatibility on your iPad with Sidecar, that would effectively give you, as well as your MacBook, a touchscreen MacBook at the same time, and I think that would be incredibly powerful. So that is one thing that I would love to see with Sidecar in the future, if possible. But there are rumours of a touchscreen MacBook in the future as well, so who knows? But I think that would be incredibly powerful if you could still use your iPad as a full touchscreen while using it with Sidecar. And then there's Universal Control, which lets you control your iPad from your Mac keyboard and mouse. So instead of using it as an extended monitor for your Mac, you're controlling your iPad with the same keyboard and mouse from your Mac. And that is one of those small things that doesn't necessarily sound like much until you start using it and you realize how powerful and useful it really is. Even for small things like dragging and dropping files from your iPad to your Mac, or maybe you've designed something inside Procreate and you want to drag and drop that straight into a Final Cut Pro timeline. Little things like that are so useful, and it saves a lot of time as well when you end up using it. It's one of those Apple ecosystem features that just works straight away without having to worry about anything. And if you use Apple products, you'll get entirely what I mean by that. It's just so easy and simple. When I'm not using the iPad for things like editing while I'm out and about on the go, I'm using apps like Notion, Millernote, Notability for things just like taking notes and scripting and planning and being creative in other ways. And I even use the iPad to write my monthly newsletter as well, which is also linked down below if you want to go and have a look at it. But I think there is something incredibly freeing about having a device as capable as this that gets you away from your main workspace or your main work computer, because it makes you think a little bit more freely and allows you to be a bit more creative without all of the distractions. And that might sound a little bit daft because you still get email and messages and everything on these, but for me personally, I've got it set up in a way that that isn't as distracting as it is while I'm on my Mac doing all of my main work, day-to-day work, and that genuinely makes quite a bit of difference. There are two accessories that have made a big difference to using the iPad for me. In fact, there's three if you include the Apple Pencil, but I'm not going to include the Apple Pencil because I think most people that use an iPad Pro will use an Apple Pencil as well. So I'm including them as one. I'm not including it in this accessory list. But the first one I mentioned earlier on in the video, and that is the paper-like screen protector, which gives you more of a matte finish to your display, super easy to apply, and it makes it feel a little bit more tactile when you're using the Apple Pencil. I really, really like that. It's linked in the description down below if you want to go and have a look at it. And the other one is this case. This is the Moff Dynamic Folio case, I think it's called, or just Moff Dynamic case. This is one of those things that when I first put it on that iPad, I found it incredibly frustrating. But once you figure it out, it is incredibly useful because you can fold this up in about, I think it's about 1 million different ways. It's not a million, I'm over exaggerating quite a lot there, but I think there is genuinely about 20 different ways in which you can fold this up. I don't think there's another case like this where it is as practical for an iPad, because you can stand it up in so many different ways that make just working comfortable when you want to change it up. Watch a little bit of YouTube, you can have it set up for that, or if you wanted a nice comfortable position to be able to draw in, you can have it set up for that. It is slightly confusing to get your head around, but once you figure out just a couple of positions that you like to use, it's great. And I will also link that down in the description as well if you want to go and have a look. So I didn't buy the M5 iPad Pro to replace my MacBook. I bought it to work alongside it and make my creative workflow a little bit easier and more enjoyable in certain situations as well, and allow me to do more creative things. I think, like I said earlier on in the video, the iPad is still quite a way from replacing your laptop and becoming your main editing computer. I think we're still quite away from that, but it can assist you in a lot of ways. I think if you're someone who is looking to replace your laptop with a Mac, for a certain section of people, I think that is possible, but I think if you are a photographer, videographer, this is a long way from fully replacing your Mac, because there are so many things that working on a Mac makes easier than using an iPad, and a lot of that is workflow wise and a little bit of software capabilities, I guess. But I think for a certain section of people, if you're just doing things like documents, emails, and surfing the web and things like that, an iPad can genuinely replace your laptop now. It is super powerful, but there are creative things that you can do on an iPad that you can't do on a MacBook, things like using the Apple Pencil, and that is where an iPad becomes very useful for creatives. I think we're still a way away from, if you're a creative, this replacing a MacBook, but I think we're slowly edging towards a world where that is possible. I think we're still a way away from it though, but who knows, it might happen very soon. Things are moving on incredibly quickly. But I think using your iPad as a tool alongside your MacBook is incredibly powerful. And these things now are ridiculously capable now. It is insane what you can do with them, let's be honest. And they're just a joy to use. And I think for me, that is where I've noticed the biggest difference, because workflow-wise, it has made my planning and post-processing workflows feel a little bit more fresh and light and a bit more flexible, and that has made a big difference, because let's be honest, that is the most boring part of the creative workflow, whether it's photography or whatever. The planning, the editing, it's the most boring part, because you just want to be out shooting and being creative in that way all of the time and using your camera. So any way that you can try and freshen up your workflow in some way is going to be a bonus. There are obviously a couple of things that I'd like to change about the iPad, and I think most of them for me, because I use it workflow wise, I think most of them come in the filing system, because I don't think it is as good as it is on the MacBook. The Files app on here is much better than it used to be. You can now have multiple windows open and drag and drop things over, and you get the progress bar now as well, which you never used to. So that is really handy if you're importing a library of photos, for example. I don't think is as powerful as Finder is on the Mac. I think if they maybe included Finder on here and they were practically the same, that would be much better, because I think it's just a little bit clunky on the iPad, although it is a hell of a lot better than it used to be. Let me know your thoughts on the brand new M5 iPad Pro. Are you thinking of getting one? Do you have an iPad already, and how do you use it in your workflow? Let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you'd maybe like to see a video on photo editing specifically on the iPad, let me know as well, because this is a photography based channel. If you'd like to see that, let me know and I'll get around to making a video like that. So don't forget to subscribe if you like what you see on the channel. If you want to go and check out another video, I recommend you go and watch this one next, and I shall see you there.